Hashem Svasai Tiptach Ufia Gitila Sacha. We're now in the fourth parak of Hoshea. This parak is the first parak in Hoshea that is referring to words that Hoshea is to give to Bnei Israel. Shim'u Divrei Hashem Bnei Israel. The other three prakim had to do with Hoshea really feeling the plight of Bnei Israel and being the leader that he needs to be. This is not an easy parak to swallow because, again, it's talking about the rebuke for Klal Yisrael. Ki riv Hashem im Yoshua Aretz. They're separating out. There's a controversy between us and Bnei and Hashem. Ki ein emes. There's no emes, which is between man and man. Ve'ein chesed. And there's no kindness between man and Hashem. Ve'ein das Elokim. And there's no das Elokim. There's no Torah ba'aretz. What do you mean there's no Torah ba'aretz? So we know in the past that one of the reasons why the Bnei Israel had the Korban, because Shelo Berchu B'Torah Tzchila, that they didn't make the bracha on the Torah. What does it mean? That means that there are different types of learning. When we said Na'aseh v'Nishma, we said Na'aseh, we'll do. We'll learn the Torah for the sake of doing. That they perhaps are doing. But what's the deeper is v'Nishma, that they're doing it, they're learning Torah for the sake of the love of learning Torah, to elevate themselves and to connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That was not happening. There was knowledge of Torah perhaps, but not the knowledge that is the one that permeate into our relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And then it goes on to say the Elul, the Chesef, the Ritzoach, all of the things that the Bnei Israel did wrong, all of them reminiscent of the Aseres HaDibros. Al Kain, therefore, Tochal ha'aretz, now that land is going to completely be destroyed. It's going to be destroyed even worse than it was during the time of the Mabul, because it talks about the chayas hasadeh, the animals, the oaf, the birds, v'gam dagei ha'aretz, and also the fish. We know during the time of the Mabul the fish were fine. And so HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to completely destroy the world. And no man and nothing is going to be left. Kimarvei Kohen. Also, the people are going to be destroyed, and everyone's going to be affected, including the Kohen. Now, the Kohen, what did the Kohanim do? So we're going to understand now that all the leaders were really, really bad. The leader, that what they did, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, because the leaders were so bad, so there was no hope for anybody else. The leaders were reminiscent of the time of Eli. Remember, Eli had Chofni and Pinchas. What did they do? They gave korbanos, but they were really excited that the Jews did not do well, and then as a result, they had to give a chatas, they had to give an asham, guilty offerings for doing sin. So they looked forward to the opportunity to be giving these korbanos, clearly not having the right intentions in what they were doing. They also did not give musar when the people needed musar. The people needed them to say, you're doing something wrong, do something differently. Now, one could say, as we've spoken about before, that leaders themselves, if they're not doing good, they can't ask the people to do good. You can't give musar to someone if you are doing exactly what they're doing wrong. It's not effective, and it's also halachic. You're not supposed to give warning and rebuke to someone in that situation unless you fully understand what they're going through and you are doing something different. And so we have an understanding here that their leaders were not doing well. And for that reason, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I'm going to punish the leaders, the Kohanim. What happens? They're not going to have a Beis HaMikdash. They're going to be without anything because they're not going to have their land. They're not going to have their position. They're going to have nothing. And so HaKadosh Baruch Hu here it's meting out Midah Keneged Midah for what they did and for what the Klal Yisrael did. The next part of the parak really highlights and illuminates what it is exactly, as in the theme with Hoshea of what they are doing wrong. What they're doing is znus. And here, znus can either be actual adultery or it's a different way to describe idols, or a combination. Znus leads to idols, like we saw in the Midbar, in the time of the Bnei Israel with the Baal Peor, that the Midianite women created a situation of harlotry, that created a situation of avodah zarah, that created a situation with Zimri and Cosby, until finally Zimri and Cosby had to die, and so that the plague that had hit Bnei Israel as a result was was removed. So we see that there is an interconnection. We also know that from the prior prakim that Hoshea was told to be in this znut-like position, because this is just something that really highlights the way that Bnei Israel have left HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But here it also adds znus v'yayin, v'tirosh. So there's a connection between znus, the idolatry, and wine. We know that yayin, oftentimes, that if someone sees in a sota a woman who is accused that she was in a room with a man without her husband, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one that has to decide and give testimony as to whether or not she was okay or not okay through a miracle, and so that's the idea of the sota. So someone who sees the sota refrains from wine, because wine obviously changes a person's judgment and leads them into doing things that obviously if they had full clarity they wouldn't do. And so here they are accused of both doing the harlotry and also the wine. That wine took the kachlev, it took their heart. And then as a result, what did they do? They went according to all of their idols, the sun, the moon, the stars. Mankind has moved very far away from what they determined to be really the security of everybody else. What gives them security is no longer HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And as a result, they, in public and in private, they worship the wrong things, and they allow for that to come into their homes. And when it comes into their homes, it comes into, if men stray, then it affects the whole dynamic of the relationship. That affects the dynamic of the family life. And so HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, so then the women ultimately also become harlots and also commit adultery, also look, and their minds and their bodies sway from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But Hashem says, Lo avkod al benosechem, I'm not going to even hold them responsible, the women, ki tiznenam, that they went off the derech, and that they did idolatry and they did adultery. Why? Because they were, it was caused to them because their husbands did it first. And so you can't be responsible. I can't do the waters of Sota and make miracles to prove that a woman really wasn't adulterous with another man when the man doesn't deserve it. When the family dynamic and the way of Hashem is not permeating in society, why would I make miracles to complete the nature of family life and to do anything? And here HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I'm not going to change nature. If somebody is in an adulterous relationship, I'm not going to not let them get pregnant. If someone is doing something that's wrong, I'm going to let them go off the derech, and I'm not going to stop them. And now Hashem also says, and this is an important message to the people of Yehuda. Don't do what you see the Bnei Yisrael, the 10 other tribes doing. You could be spared if you just don't sway, don't live in a bad neighborhood where you're going to be impacted in a bad way. You still have a chance. Otherwise, you're going to sway just like everybody else sways. And if you're doing that, then you're ultimately you're going to believe in Avodah Zarah, Ba'al Tishbu Chai Hashem, and you're no longer going to swear for me. So don't be involved in neighborhood things that will just allow you to go off the derech. So there's the family life that gets broken. There's the neighborhoods that get broken up by going against Hashem. And what does Hashem compare us to? Kakaparas sarara sarar Yisrael, that we're going to get punishment because we're like a cow that won't work. That it's just so stubborn, and it doesn't allow for there to be its job, and it doesn't listen to its master. And so HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I'll leave you out to pasture. That's it. You're going to have nothing. It's mita keneged mita. But there's one saving grace, and this is an important pasuk. Chabor atzabim Ephraim hanachlo. Ephraim is joined to idols, but let him alone. Why would Ephraim be let alone? Everybody else is going down. Why isn't Ephraim? And the fact is, because what did they do? They've chabur. They've united. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says there are two things that are ultimately going to protect you: the Torah and achdus. If you have achdus, then I am going to skip over you when it comes to the punishment. You're not going to, you're ultimately going to be affected by it, but I'm not going to meet and rain down on you the ultimate as everyone else gets. And this ultimate punishment is really, really bad. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu says that only in Gullus, ultimately, then then you're going to be ashamed of what you've done. That there still is a benefit to being in Gullus. That benefit that we have is that then we can see our ways. We can take note and see how difficult life is without HaKadosh Baruch Hu and what the true purpose is. The Mefarshim talk about what this idolatry and adultery. Everyone in their own generations. We know that idolatry and the need for avodah zarah was taken away. That desire was taken away. But all of us, what are the things that we cling to? What are the sticks that we hold as steady markers and supporters for ourselves? What values do we put in the Torah? What values do we put in Achdus? The message of this parak is not just one for Hoshea's time, but rather Ladoros. It's time for us to pause and reflect on what we truly give credence to and what we put as the ultimate for ourselves. And hopefully we can come up with good answers. And if not, then we can hopefully derive some chizuk from this and change our ways. And in that way, Kadosh Baruch Hu says that then he can bring the ultimate Yeshua.